I've been hiking and backpacking for many years now, and during that time, I've learned about the gear and skills I need to keep me safe, comfortable, and efficient in the backcountry. I've refined my kit over that time, and today I wanted to share the gear that I use when I go on one of my backpacking trips. I've added a link in the description of this video to my gear list, which is hosted on lighterpack.com. It lists each item, its weight, and each item has a hyperlink where you can find more information. I hope this information is helpful for those of you going on similar trips. So with that, let's get into what gear I take backpacking. The backpack I use is the Hyperlight Mountain Gear 2400 Southwest. This is a 40-liter pack with an internal frame. I like the simple design of packs like this where you have just 3 external pockets outside the main compartment, which is part of the reason why a frame pack like this weighs only 2 pounds. The padding on the shoulder straps and the hip belt are comfortable, and overall the pack carries weight well. The frame, I find, does a good job at transferring some of the load off of my shoulders and onto my hips. The roll top closure and the side compression straps allow me to compress the pack to better fit the load that I'm carrying. The pack is constructed of a Dyneema composite material that's durable and also water resistant. Overall, this is one of the most comfortable packs that I've used over the years. To make sure the contents of my pack stay dry, I line the inside of the pack with one of these waterproof pack liners from Gossamer Gear. I like these liners because they're tall enough to fit the height of my pack and the material is durable. Now, this goes into the main part of my pack before I add any items inside, which ensures that the contents of my pack stay dry for the duration of my trip. The shelter I use is the Mountain Laurel Design Solomid XL. This is a solo pyramid style shelter where you can use your trekking poles as the primary structure, which obviously saves weight. The weight of the complete shelter, which includes the outer, the inner, the 6 stakes, and the stuff sacks for those 3 components, is less than 30 ounces, so it's very light. It's very quick and easy to set up. It takes just a few minutes to set up, so I can be very efficient, which is nice at the end of a long day to be able to get the shelter set up quickly. The size and shape of a solo pyramid style shelter makes it one of the best shelters for dealing with wind or even light snow. It's a true double wall shelter with a separate outer and inner, so the inner provides separation from any condensation that forms on the outer. Now, while I normally pitch the 4 corners of the outer a little higher off the ground, which helps increase ventilation and minimize condensation, if I'm expecting rain, I can pitch the 4 corners lower to the ground to avoid any water spray from getting inside the tent. I've used this shelter for many years and I'm very happy with it. The quilt I use is the Katabatic Gear Palisades quilt, which is rated at 30 degrees Fahrenheit. For insulation, it uses 900 fill down. I prefer down to synthetic insulation because it has a better warmth to weight ratio and it compresses to a smaller volume inside my pack. The quilt weighs only 17.5 ounces and is extremely warm for its weight. It has 2 clips on either side that attach to 2 separate pieces of cord that are wrapped around a sleeping pad. And what this does is it helps keep the quilt fixed to the pad so that as I roll around throughout the night, the quilt stays fixed to the pad. Also, if you look at the graphic in the lower right, the clips allow me to control how tight the quilt is draped around me, so I can start the beginning of the night with it loose, and then in the middle of the night when it gets really cold, I can draw the sides in closer to stay warm. The construction quality of the quilt is top notch, and this has become one of my favorite pieces of gear over the years. The sleeping pad I use is the Thermarest Uberlight, which is an inflatable mattress. I prefer an inflatable mattress because I find that I just get a better night's sleep, which is obviously important for recovery. This mattress is very light at only 9 ounces. It packs down really small, and you could see its size in relation to a Nalgene bottle. You do have to be careful with this pad because it's not quite as thick as other pads, but I should mention that one of the things I do is I do inspect my camp spot before I set up my tent, and I'll remove any sharp objects like rocks or sticks that might pierce the tent floor and also my sleeping pad. For a pillow, I use this Cuban fiber dry sack that has fleece on one side. Basically, I just stuff it with any extra clothes. Usually what I do is I just stuff my down jacket inside it, so I end up with a pretty nice luxurious down pillow. Okay, lastly, I actually use my sit pad as part of my sleep system. So I put this small sit pad between my sleeping pad and the tent floor, and this particular EVA foam provides enough friction to prevent my pad from sliding around inside my tent at night, which works out really well. So basically I have a sit pad during the day, and then I can use this at night to mitigate my pad from sliding around. For hydration, I'm currently using 2 of the 1 liter Be-Free water filter bottles, and this is a new piece of gear for me this year. I had been using the Aquamira drops for years. The only thing I didn't like about those is after I would add the drops, I'd have to wait a certain period of time before I can drink the water, which meant there would be, a half an hour where I'd carry water around that I couldn't drink. And with the Be-Free bottles, I can fill up and drink the water right away. And the flow rate in these is really good. Okay, kitchen. So for the last couple of years, I've switched to simply cold soaking my food. So I no longer bring a stove and fuel, and I just have these 2 items as part of my kit to soak my food, which is basically my breakfast and dinners. So I just have this empty Talenti jar that I put my food in to allow it to soak, and then I just use this cut down spoon where when I'm not using it, it fits inside the jar, so the whole kit ends up being real compact. It's basically a way to just simplify the kit, and so far I've liked this method. I can see that in the future I'll probably switch between this and bringing a stove, but for now I've been pretty happy with doing it this way. For lighting, I use the Nitecore NU25 headlamp. It's a rechargeable headlamp. It's pretty lightweight. It's great for in camp, and also it has enough lumens so that if I need to do a little bit of hiking at night, this thing is powerful enough to light up the trail. For navigation, I use the AllTrails app on my smartphone, and I carry paper maps. So before my trip, I'll create my route on the app, and then I'll cache that map to my phone. Then, when I'm out on trail, I'll put my smartphone in airplane mode. And this saves battery power on the phone, but also it still enables the GPS capability. So the app with GPS is really useful for those times when you're not sure if you're still on trail. I've had trips where, a section of the trail is snow covered, or I'm on a trail that's unmaintained, and it's often difficult to make out exactly where the trail is. And this is where the app really shines and allows me to be confident when I get into those situations. Lastly, the paper maps act as a backup, but they also provide a lot of detail. So usually what I'll do is I'll study the map each night in camp, looking at the next day's route. And I'll look for things like where the campsites are, water crossings, important trail junctions that I want to make sure I'm aware of before I get to them, things like that. For food protection, I use a Barricade Scout bear canister to store my food at night. I can store up to 5 days of food in this small canister, and it's one of the lightest on the market. Now, this is one area where I sacrifice weight for efficiency, since I use this on almost all of my trips, including in areas where bear cans are not required. It takes no time for me to store my food. I'm not looking for a bear hang. My food's secure in the bear can. I know that in the morning when I go get my food, it's going to be there, and I can store my food easily away from camp. And of all the nights I've used this canister, I've never had an issue with it, so I just continue to use it even though it's a little heavier than other methods. For communication, I use an iPhone and also a Garmin InReach Mini. Now the phone is really just used for the tail ends of a trip, the start and the finish, since when I'm on trail, I'm usually well outside cell service. The Garmin InReach Mini is something I've been using for the last few years, and it's the device that allows me to be able to communicate while I'm on trail. So I could send a text each night to let family and friends know that I'm safe, and I can send them my GPS coordinates so they can see exactly where I'm at camped. And then its most beneficial feature, of course, is if you get into a life-threatening situation, you can hit the SOS button and call for help, which can save your life. And then lastly, I bring a Nightcore power bank that's used to charge my devices. I plan to do a separate video where I go into clothing, layering, and footwear in more detail, but I'll touch on some things here. First, I should point out that the clothing I have listed here is for a mid to late summer trip. If my trip is in the shoulder season, then I'd likely add more layers and substitute some of the items for heavier pieces of gear. So if we assume this is a mid to late summer trip, I'm looking for clothing that provides bug and sun protection, clothing that breathes well so I don't get too hot, and clothing that dries quickly if it gets wet. For a top, I like a button-down polyester travel shirt. I like these in the summer since they have a tight weave that prevents bugs from biting through the shirt. The top I have listed only has a single pocket, and I actually prefer a shirt that doesn't have any pockets because I don't really use the pockets, and excess pockets are just going to add weight, and in those areas where the pockets are, they double up the fabric and also reduce breathability. So for bottoms, I usually hike in pants for the sun, bug, and brush protection, but if it's really hot, I'll hike in shorts. I like the pants that are made from mostly nylon and have a small percentage of spandex. The spandex allows for some stretch to the pants, which I like. And to protect my head from the sun, I'll hike in a ball cap and then add a lightweight sun gaiter to protect my neck and face. And then I'll also wear sunglasses to protect my eyes. And then lastly, I hike in trail running shoes, and I look for a shoe that's durable, well cushioned, and has an aggressive lug pattern to give me good traction. So now if we take a look at the clothing that I carry, we'll start with the jackets. For the insulation layer, I use the Feathered Friends EOS down jacket. I mainly use this layer in the evening and morning in camp when it's cold and I've stopped moving for the day. I can also sleep in this jacket inside my quilt if it were to get really cold at night. For a rain shell, I use the Patagonia Storm Racer rain jacket. This jacket is simple and light. It doesn't have hand pockets to save weight. For a wind shell, I use the Patagonia Houdini jacket. I often hike in it when it's windy or early morning starting out when it's still a little chilly. I can also use this when I first get into camp in the evening. I'll put this jacket on to protect me from the bugs in camp. Overall, I really like the versatility of this jacket, and it's become my all-time favorite clothing item. Alright, continuing with the clothing that I carry. As you can see, I bring a bug net unless my trip is outside the bug season. A bug net weighs next to nothing and is really going to protect you from bugs in camp when they can get pretty bad. Also, I'll bring a merino wool cap and gloves. I'll bring a second pair of socks and underwear, and then I bring a separate shirt and bottom that I use exclusively for sleeping. And I do this for two reasons. If my hiking clothes happen to get wet, like it's raining out, then I know that when I get into camp, I always have a dry pair of clothes to sleep in. And then also, I just like to sleep in clean clothing and not sleep in my hiking clothing, as it's usually a little dirty. All right, hygiene, first aid, and repair. I won't go through all of these items that are included here because there's a lot of individual items. But the things that go into my kit here are, things that you're able to treat while you're on trail. So dealing with minor cuts and scrapes or overuse aches and pains, allergic reactions or stomach issues. Those are the things that I'll include items in my kit to be able to deal with those. But I would refer you to my page on lighterpack.com if you want to see exactly all the items that I include in this section. I use the Black Diamond Alpine Carbon Cork trekking poles. These poles are light at 16 ounces for the pair, and they're very strong, and I've had the same pair for many years now. I'm a big advocate for hiking with trekking poles as they really help whenever you're trekking across slippery surfaces like water crossings or snow travel, where having 4 points of contact is going to be much more stable than just having 2. Snow travel. So let's say it's early summer and all the snow hasn't melted out and there's still some lingering snow in the higher elevations. If the route that I have planned has some snow-covered sections, then I need to consider bringing these devices. So here we have 2 traction devices, micro spikes and crampons, and then we also have an ice axe for self-arresting. Now, which of these items I bring will very much depend on the terrain and the conditions. For example, if the snow-covered sections are not steep, then I would consider using the micro spikes and my trekking poles to maintain my footing. Now, on the other hand, if the snow-covered sections are steep and potentially icy, then I would opt for the crampons and an ice axe. So, like I said, which items I bring will very much depend on the terrain and conditions. All right, so that concludes with what gear I take on my backpacking trips. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more related content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.